Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Dan Schmidt. I am along with Ian Sanchez behind the scenes today, my crack producer.
How's it going?
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for being here with me. Today we're bringing you, this is going to be a new series that it's going to be within the Deer Talk Now podcast series. We're calling this News, Notes, and Review. And Ian, do you want to know, it was a backhanded compliment my friend Jim gave me.
What's that?
He said you are literally insane, and he meant that in the best way possible. Because I've been doing this for 30 years. How I keep track of the deer stuff. I get a little bit, as you know, I get a little bit emotional. I get a little bit reactive, but I always back it with all the stuff that we've worked on here at Deer and Deer Hunting, and that's what we're going to do today.
Well, cool. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. You gave me a brief before the podcast here. You gave me a brief overview of what we were going to be talking about, and I know the listeners are looking forward to it as well.
I appreciate all of you listeners, watchers, viewers, wherever you're consuming this podcast. Without your support, without your help, it wouldn't be possible, and we love doing it for you, but we also love bringing you real live news. And obviously, I'm going to give you some analysis today with that news based off of the things I know. So I'm going to get to it. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this into 3 sections, Ian. It's going to be news first, notes, which is kind of like news, but it's a little bit more light-hearted. It's a little bit more upbeat. And then the review, we're going to give a review at the end. And when the product reviews that I do are only going to be of the stuff that I have used personally, because I don't believe it's fair to tell somebody, yes, this product or whatever that you've used over the years or new stuff is good if you haven't actually used it while you're hunting. So that's how we're going to do this today.
Well, cool. Yeah, and I agree with you. No blowing smoke here. Let's jump right into the news. What do you got?
Okay, I got 3 things, and I'm going to build you guys up. If you want to follow along with my madness, because I do get geeky, grab your Deer Hunter's Almanac. If you don't have one, they're $10. You can order them off our website. I'm not going to. It's just deeranddeerhunting.com or shopdeerhunting.com. But that's where that's where a lot of the stats come from, and we've been keeping those for a long time. Number 1 is news out of Vermont. Now, when you think of Vermont, you don't think of you think of a historic deer hunting state, but you don't think of, a main destination. Like, you don't think of like an Iowa or Kansas. You don't think of Vermont that way. But the Benoits are from Vermont. It's got a lot of rich history. For generations of Vermont, the regular fall deer hunting season, you might not have known this, Ian. Historically, if you wanted to kill a buck in Vermont, it was during gun season.
Really?
You could not kill does during gun season. I should have flipped this backwards. If you want to kill a doe for meat, you could not do it during gun season. It had to be during bow season. So the state, their structure up until this past year allows hunters to take 4 deer a year, one of which can be a buck. And during the rifle season, individuals are only allowed to take their 1 antlered buck. You can't kill. So if you got 4 tags, you got 3 doe tags. You couldn't kill any of those does during the gun season, or muzzleloader season. People would fill their doe tags during archery or muzzleloader season. The Fish and Wildlife Department would like to do the same. Olivia Geiger reports that they want to change it this fall. So this is a quote from Olivia's story. She said she's quoting Nick Fortin, wildlife biologist. He says, "I apologize for the blasphemy as they introduce a new rule in Vermont to recommend people be allowed to shoot does during gun season." Is that kind of crazy?
That is pretty crazy. Yeah.
So if you think about it, if you go back and you look at the harvest stats, number 1, I think it's a good idea. If they're having population increases, which I'm sure they're having, it only makes sense. But I'm sure that's going to be a hard sell to the old timers who are like, nope, you don't.
They're not gonna listen.
You don't kill the does, and you especially don't kill them with a gun. But if you look at Vermont's 5-year deer harvest, it is only, when I say only, 17,574 deer per year. That's not a lot. That ranks very low in North America as far as whitetail harvest. However, most of that has been antlered bucks. If you look at their antlered buck harvest, Their gun harvest averages about 13,000 deer, so that's all bucks. And so out of that average of 17,000 deer a year, only 4,000 of that harvest could be included with does. But you got to also understand, guys are hunting for bucks with a bow, so I bet you very, very few does are killed. And you might ask why that is. Vermont, Northeast state, a very tough climate. Number one, it's a smaller state comparatively to some other states, but that northeast habitat, you're dealing with harsh winters, you're dealing with coyotes, you're actually dealing with coyote and wolf hybrids in some areas. So you're looking at a very low harvest, but also the state has over 107,000 gun hunters and about 22,000 bow hunters. So I'm sure a lot of those guys do both. But let's just say 115, 120,000 hunters now are going to be able to experience what we've experienced forever. It seems like. I actually remember when you had to apply for what they called a party permit back in the day. Did I ever explain that to you?
I think so. Explain it again.
So a party permit was historically here in Wisconsin or other states, I know it was in other states, you'd have a party of hunters. So you'd have 6 or 8 or 10 guys that you'd all go gun hunting together. And you applied for what was called a party permit. And that was a doe tag that you shared amongst yourself. One tag. So your party would get one doe tag. This just was, they did away with it right when I started hunting, which would have been in the early 1980s. But so back then, I remember my dad and brothers, they'd apply for a party permit. They'd get a metal tag. That tag, I actually have some of them in my little deer hunting
Those little metal clip ones.
museum. Yeah. So you would get one tag, and the thought there was it was deer camp, so it was a 9-day deal, and the guys would go up north hunting, and so they always had a rule, like, Ian, you're the youngest hunter in the group, you get to first crack to fill the doe tag.
Right, yeah.
Or they would have it was most often a kid or a first-time hunter, but sometimes they would like play cards to see who would win.
Right,
the
make a little game out of it, yeah.
And then, or some camps would just like, hey, first deer's down. First doe somebody sees is going to get shot, and then,
Holler.
And so they'd bring it in, and that was camp meat for the week.
Yeah, yep.
So it was kind of cool, and that's why they call it party, because of the group mentality.
Right.
But it was also a party because if you shot the deer, hey, we're eating venison.
I love that, yeah. Something that could not exist today.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it in camps where we've eaten deer, but...
Yeah.
So that's out of Vermont. Interesting that they have gone up until, 2025. I think actually I take that back. This regulation wouldn't go in effect until 2026. But
I see your point. It's just to go this long up until this point with such a traditional structure.
Because we think of all these states that have deer coming out of their ears, and we're getting to some of that here in a minute, actually with our next brief, that you wouldn't think there would be such a shortage. But now they are seeing areas of Vermont that are overbrowsed, overpopulated, and they want to do something about it. So they're gonna try this. And thumbs up to Vermont for trying this. Just make sure that whether you're a manager or you're just a hunter, I always say be careful what you wish for, because you still have to have some discretion. When they allowed that for most of the country, when they said, hey, we're going to kill does until your ears bleed because here's all the tags, people found out pretty fast that you can overshoot a deer herd. And it can affect you. It can depends upon where you're at. It can take a while for it to come back. Usually not long, but once you get that ingrained, you might have some problems there. Okay, number 2 for our news comes out of our friends and neighbors in Michigan. And now I got to take this is like Wheatus when he has to take that big, and
Yeah, this is a big one.
Anybody in that younger generation knows what I'm talking about. Okay, Michigan. This is from Jira DeLapp, another good reporter out of Michigan. The Michigan Department of Transportation has secured a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to fund wildlife crossing analysis. The wildlife crossing analysis will look at locations where wildlife, let's be honest, deer. Let's just call this a deer crossing analysis, where deer vehicle crashes occur most in the state. Okay, off the top of your head, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. They're going to study where deer crashes are. The Michigan DOT was awarded $500,000 to fund this study from the federal government. I'm going to give you a little bit of detail here first. In 2023, which was the last year of reporting, so 2 years ago, there were reported 58,806. So let's just round that up and say 60,000 car deer crashes in Michigan that were reported. Of that total, 1,700 people were injured, 19 people were killed, which is horrible, and 11 of those 19 people were motorcyclists. Deer car crashes result in $130 million in damage annually in Michigan. The odds of hitting a deer in Michigan are 1 in 59, which ranks third in the U.S. And a couple of, if you live in Michigan and you're curious, Huron County ranked just out of the top 10. It had the highest number of Michigan's 83 counties with just say 1,200 crashes.
Wow.
So number one, it's terrible that people are dying from deer crashes. Unfortunately, just driving is a dangerous thing. And if we pull up other statistics, I'm sure there's other statistics that show that, if you're driving on a freeway, your odds of a lot of things are going to happen. However, what I want to do is sift through that because, we've been on a mission lately to uncover questions that should be asked to state agencies, especially when it comes to how they're being funded and when they're getting funds, how that's being used. So you'd say, well, $500,000, that's probably just a normal day in studying car deer crashes. My question would be, okay, I would want more detail. If I was a resident of Michigan, I would say, okay, that's great, but what exactly are you going to be studying? Because I know that there has to be 50 years worth of data already on car deer crashes in Michigan as any other state as to where these are happening, whatever it's the interstate system or if it's the county highways, whatever. What is the purpose of the study? And what is the ultimate goal of the study, which I have not seen anything on. I haven't seen anything saying, well, this is what we want to study, and this is the red flags for me always go up is if you're spending taxpayer dollars, and that's this case. This isn't hunter dollars, it's taxpayer dollars. You're getting taxpayer dollars from the federal government, and now you're spending them on behalf of the taxpayers. What is your goal to accomplish? And what now, on the flip side, what could be done to help stem that problem without spending more money on research? So now let's look at a little bit of the data on Michigan. We know this very well. We've studied Michigan for over 30 years here. As of today, 580,000 gun hunters, 322,000 bow hunters. That's staggering. That is right up there with Michigan. Always was number one. Michigan's 5-year deer harvest average is 366,000 deer that hunters kill a year. Last year was only 300,000, just a tick. 303,000 deer were killed in Michigan. Now, what I often caution people is don't take these numbers at face value. They're accurate, but go back. You have to go back and look at the history because that's something that politicians don't want you to do. That's something that anti-hunters don't want you to do. Because if you look at it, and I tell you, if just pretend that some of those guys are not 2-season hunters, and the fact that they're not bow hunting and gun hunting, if you say, what was it, 580,000 and 322,000, let's just say 700,000, good number, 700,000 different individuals hunting deer in Michigan. Okay? That's great, but it's a shadow of what it used to be. What it used to be was well over 1 million, and from 1989 to 2012, stay with me here, 1989 to 2012, a very long span, Michigan was number 1 in the country, hands down, Texas included. 16 years in that span, remember the number I just told you about the harvest, Ian? I know you're not taking notes.
Yeah.
16 years in the span prior, 450,000 deer. 16 years, they killed over 450,000 deer a year compared to 300,000 last year. Okay? And 2 of those years were well over 500,000 deer killed. So that has to, you have to ask yourself, well, if let's just say in 1999, Michigan killed 550,000 deer, and there was well over 1 million hunters, what was the auto crash data then? It wasn't that high. It wasn't as high as this. And what's changed? I'll tell you what's changed. The state has made it harder for hunters in Michigan. Take yourself out of this equation. If you're hunting in Iowa or Kansas or South Carolina, or I don't know if South Carolina falls into this, but if Michigan used to be, I'll give you an idea. Michigan, ton of hunters, 1 million hunters, lot of small properties, tons of small. Take the UP out of this. Lower Michigan, 20 acres, 30 acres, 15 acres. That was your hunting property. And there's a whole section of Michigan that was called club country. All these tiny little deer camps. Tiny. If you had 40 acres, that was a big piece. Guess how they were hunting? They were allowed to use bait. And baiting has been banned. Why is that mainly, Ian?
In part because of the, they think, well, isn't it because they think the audio collisions are causing it?
No. Because of, we have to ban baiting because it spreads CWD. There isn't one single shred of evidence that shows that baiting spreads disease, not chronic wasting disease.
With how social deer already are, yeah. So
they took a tool away from the hunters. And I'm not saying this is the only reason. There's a plethora of reasons why hunter numbers are down. We know that. We could talk about that till I'm blue in the face. But there's all this attacks on hunting. We're going to ban baiting. We're going to ban scents. They didn't do that in Michigan, but in other places. We're going to do these things to where finally, I always say, take yourself out of your situation and look at it rationally. Rationally is you have 1 million guys and gals out there trying to hunt, and now you're saying, well, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do that. Oh, by the way, we want you to kill more deer. And oh, by the way, we're killing so many more deer with auto on our highways. You're not doing them any favors. And the reason I've leaned right of center on the baiting issue for this reason. It allows people like my dad, rest his soul, who hunted 5 acres to spread 2 gallons of corn across a size of, this room, which squirrels eat in a couple hours, the chance to see a deer. If you didn't do that on such parcels, you weren't going to hunt. And whether you like it or not, there's strength in numbers, and there's strength in 1 million people going hunting as opposed to 700,000. There's strength in numbers, and from the state's perspective, well, we want to manage these deer herds. Let the people do it for you. That's one solution that's going to help. I'm not going to say it's going to cure it. It's going to help. But if I was a Michigan resident, I would be sitting there questioning, well, if you're getting $1 million from the feds Well, it's from the federal DOT, and that's probably going to be earmarked for that. I still question, like, how is that going to be spent? And people will say, well, it doesn't matter. It's free money. No, it's not. It's your money and it's my money. And we should have a say in how it's spent. I'm not saying that it should not. If they can come to you with a good, compelling case to say this is why we need to do it. And the other thing, too, if they're spending that money, I'd look at it as a business owner. As a deer hunter, you are a stakeholder in your state. You should be saying, well, that's $500,000 that we didn't have. True. But who's using that $500,000? Your employees. So now your employees are taking time away from what they were already doing. You know what I'm saying? It all goes hand in hand. And that's something I think definitely in Michigan should be on your radar. But not only Michigan, look for those things in your state. As you know, we are at a crossroads in America right now where people are just sick and tired of things are harder. Things are much more expensive. It's harder to make a living, especially now. This is a thing that we love. This is our pastime, and they're going to make it more expensive for us, which is my next point here. We should be questioning everything that's being done, whether it affects us directly or indirectly, like in this case.
It should always certainly benefit the overall outcome of conservation. I agree. And one thing I wanted to point out really quickly, Dan, was that I'm seeing like kind of an analogy here being drawn about, okay, they're spending $500,000 on studying where these crashes are occurring.
Right.
Right? Just like how we're spending a lot of money on where CWD is being found.
Great parallel.
Like, who cares where car crashes are happening? We know why they're happening. Like, who cares where CWD is? We want to know why it is. And I think as a person who spends a lot of money in, both conservation with my tags and licenses and just in general as a taxpayer, it's pretty frustrating to see all this money go down the drain.
That's an excellent point. I'll just play devil's advocate with the car crash situation. I think it's probably pretty evident already because that stuff, it's not like they haven't already been documenting it. I know there are some states like Wyoming, completely different than Michigan. Have we talked about this? They're looking at those wildlife crossings. Not where deer, where animals cross, but they're looking at in Europe. They create land bridges across the highway.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Or under the highway, and they have in some cases, like I can't remember the countries over there, but they're having red deer and animals like that. They target so where they can cross. Wyoming, there's certain areas I know where they're doing it for antelope and elk, and I think that's probably going to be pretty successful. In Michigan, I would really question it because when you're talking about a deer herd it's
so sporadic,
pushing 1.7 million animals.
Yeah,
those things are going, where they run out anywhere.
They could not plan that out accordingly. No,
and they'd waste a lot of money doing it.
Sure,
but I agree with you. It's like, okay. And the other thing, too, we talked about this when we were talking with Dr. Seabury and Dr. Kroll, we were talking about there's nothing worse than grant money going to research when there isn't specific parameters around it, because that's just another payday. I'm not saying everybody's corrupt, but I'm just saying it's like, well, that's, $500,000 is a good way to stay relevant in your job for a couple of years. Yeah, we're going to study why deer keep getting killed on October 30th. Here's a thought. The rut.
I see your point.
Or May 15th. Well, here's a thought. Buck dispersal in spring. I mean, we've already know that stuff. Michigan is a hotbed for research. We know that with John Ozoga and Lou Verm and all the great researchers that have come out of that state. So, like I said, I would be questioning that if I was if I was you sitting there. Okay, the big one, as you know, right here at home in Wisconsin. So I put this on my professional, what you want to call it, page, my Daniel E. Schmidt
It's
page.
your baseball page.
That's
is
my
what
baseball
it is.
page. Yeah, on Facebook and Twitter, and this was 2 days ago, and I could not. It was shared over 1,000 times. Here in Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers, Democratic governor here from Wisconsin, added again just after one day. You guys have heard this news, I hope. One day after introducing language to change the term mother to, quote, inseminated person, we got the news from Governor Evers' office that he is proposing massive increases in hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses here in the Badger State, calling for nearly a 91% increase for resident deer license, 125% increase for small game license, and I wrote some of these down. Resident... And I know people are going to come after me on this one a little bit. Resident deer license going from $24 to $44, $20 increase. Non-resident license going from $198 to $208, a $20 increase. And a small game license going up to $36 for a resident. Trapping license doubling from $20 to $40. Non-resident trapping license going up $20 from $150 to $170. And so on, so on and so forth.
I just want to point out, sorry, just a correction. The non-resident license is not going up $20. It is going up $10.
$10.
Which is still whatever, but yeah.
$10. So a lot of people will say, a lot of people agreed with me. I actually, the majority of people who read it agreed with me that this is ridiculous unless we have some answers. The other people say, well, they'll happily spend for conservation. I'm going to get that in a minute. And the other ones are saying, well, why is the non-resident only going up by a small amount? Because if you go to, I hunt Wyoming and Illinois and Iowa, those deer tags, non-resident deer tags, are insane. Some are $400, $500, $600, $700, depending upon where you're hunting.
I'm bothered by the trapping one the most here because it's just like a trapping. Okay, it's a $20 increase, the same as the resident license increase, general hunting resident license increase. But the cost that trappers incur is, like, I feel a lot more than what, between lures and traps and all the snares and everything that they're doing. I feel like between that and a hunter and trappers running that year round almost, I feel like that's kind of just a jab to them having to, like, double that.
It is a jab that it's doubled, and I see why states have problems. However, you brought up the trapping one. I'm going to bring up the small game one.
Yeah.
And I always think back.
That's huge.
You're a kid, 18 years old. Sorry if you are in my mind, because I'm much older than that. Because kids get discounts. Kids, 14, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds. But you're a young adult. Let me put it that way. And you want to go rabbit or squirrel hunting. And now you're just getting into it. You're just thinking about, because states are like, we need hunters, right? So how did most of us started, I started when I was a kid, 6 years old, rabbit and squirrel hunting. And now it's like, well, it was 20, well, I think it was 24, and now it's 44. It's like, I'm not going to do that. Why would I might go squirrel hunting once, and is it going to justify me spending $44 for a license? I just wanted to go out there once, try it. I heard somebody post something on Instagram that squirrel meat is delicious, and it is delicious, by the way. It got me through college, as are rabbits. But I'm not going to spend that. Why? And so, number one. Number two, what is the state doing to improve rabbit or squirrel habitat?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah,
no state.
$16 to $36, $20 increase, and what is that money going towards?
No state is doing anything to increase rabbit or squirrel habitat.
Well, hold on now, though, Dan, because if we go back to Michigan, they're spending $500,000 on wildlife crossing analysis, and that does include squirrels, so I just want to throw that in there.
But that's federal money they got, so that's free money. That's like a free play in football, It's but that's
what they're doing for small game.
So let's just pretend that there's, I don't know. I mean, a lot. You have to buy a small game license for just about everything. So let's just say there's 400,000 small game hunters in Wisconsin, and now you're going to be spending, was it $42?
$36 for the small game license.
36?
Yeah, it went from 16 to 36.
So $36?
Yeah, $20 increase.
That's $14.4 million
Jeez.
that they're getting from those licenses. $14.5 million. Is there $14.5 million going back into rabbit and squirrel? Well, Dan, I can hear you guys. I know you guys are out. Well, it's more than that. It's pheasants and it's grouse and, it's all this stuff. It's like, okay, what are they doing for pheasant habitat? What? Oh, I'll tell you what they're doing. I have it right here. I thought I had it right. I don't. The state does release some pen birds in some of these wildlife areas. That's nonsense. If they're doing that, and that is what the if that would be the main rationale for expenditures, that's what I'm saying. I'd like a line item P&L on what that stuff is being spent on. And I think that's something that, if anything, at least our hired representatives should be looking at. Because there's no way that we should be expecting this large increase, and it's the same way with anything in government. It's the stuff that Elon Musk is discovering. And let's not go down that path, but other than saying that if I'm a small game hunter, let's put all the small game species on the bucket list, whatever, or the basket, and say, here's that group of stakeholders. That money should be going specifically for them and no one else. Not because, we have a budget shortfall in the DNR in general and we have to make it up somewhere. Well, don't look in my pocket. You're not getting an extra $20 out of me. That's the way we should be looking at that.
Do you think, I'm sorry, I have to chime in here, but do you think that the increase in these, license fees is going to encourage hunters to harvest more this year? Like, wow, I didn't expect that to be that expensive. I'm going to have to get a bang for my buck this year and really shoot everything, really fill it up, or, do you think that that's a common trend we might see?
I don't. I think that some people do that.
Yeah.
If I was really strapped, I would. But I think what we're going to see more of this year is that I buy the patron license. I've bought it forever. It is, did I put it on here?
Yep, $160 to $200.
It was $160. So here, and I know everybody, wherever you live, you probably have a license like this. Here we have one that's called a patron license. So if I buy that, I get basically everything. I get small game, I get trapping, I get both gun and bow deer, my crossbow. In Wisconsin, you have to do either. Well, you don't have to do either. You have archery, and then there's a crossbow add-on. I think it's $10. If you want to do it, if you want to fish, hunt, whatever, you pay your $160, which is reasonable, and you get to do that. But now with these increases, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, you know what? I didn't go squirrel hunting last year. I don't need that small game license. I didn't go turkey hunting last year. I don't need that turkey license. Mm-hmm. We don't. I didn't even look to see what the turkey increase was going to be. I didn't go fishing. Whatever. They start going through their head, and I think you're going to see attrition. I think you're going to see. Well, I think you could see fewer licenses sold, and what that is, it's not from probably anybody who's listening to this podcast. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're an avid deer hunter. I'm guessing. I hope you are, or you're an avid hunter. So I think you're going to see people. You might see people who did bow and gun and all this, and you might see some of those diehards cut back. But I think you're going to see the fringe hunters, and we need all of them. The people who only went a couple days, or the people who did a couple things, they might. I'm not going to get one this year.
Maybe they fished like 5 times throughout the year.
So they're not going to buy the fishing license.
Yeah, and they're like, and I can see that being a considerable loss on that end, but I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Do you know what I think the bigger point is on all this though? Because I think when we look at this as hunters, we think that this is our duty to fund the DNR, which it is. It's our duty to help preserve conservation, but we hold ourselves to a much higher level. But we should also be demanding, we're not in this alone. Yes, we would like to write our own ticket. However, the state in general needs to step up and stop spending money foolishly other places. And that's why I see you're seeing this big revolt against government everywhere, in the fact that we're all in this together, but you're running out there spending all this money on XYZ other initiatives. I said, look at that bottom line. What is that natural resource mean to this state? And if you really want to pull punches, how much money is that natural resource bringing to this state in hunting and fishing dollars? It's a lot. It's a $1 billion industry in Wisconsin alone. It's a $1 billion industry in just about every whitetail-rich state in North America. So when you look at if it's here or other states, that if it's a DNR, if it's a wildlife agency, yes, they use that money for a host of wildlife management programs, including stocking game fish, restoring habitats, wardens. Obviously, we need wardens. Monitoring chronic wasting disease. Huge red flag there. We talked about this. Should we be monitoring it? Yes. At the levels we're monitoring it? I don't know. What was the number last week?
Oh, I forget.
How many billions of dollars have we spent on this?
Oh.
$500 million.
Yeah.
$500 million we've spent on CWD testing.
And that's in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a disease that we know does not infect humans. Well, it could. It doesn't. It doesn't infect humans. There's no research that shows that it infects humans. On a disease that does not decimate deer herds globally. Doesn't do it. Some small studies and little test areas, maybe in northwestern Wyoming, where the deer population already is very, very small, there could be a correlation. I'm not saying that. I said it's got to be much more focused. We got to be much more focused on how much money we're spending, what we're spending on, and what kind of priority we're giving that. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Outdoor Edge and their new Ergomax 6-piece professional grade processing knife set. Take your wild game processing to the next level with this top-tier set, which includes 5 expertly designed knives tailored for every task. Plus, the included 2-stage sharpener ensures your blades stay incredibly sharp no matter the job. For more information, go to OutdoorEdge.com. Here, this one is really going to rackle your fur or feathers, depending upon what you have. Back to Wisconsin. This really chaps me, Ian. Okay, so all those increases, $20 here, $10 there, whatever it happens to be. We added it up here before I do the drum roll. Okay, so deer licenses are going up, $20,
mm-hmm.
right? So we know we have at least 500,000 deer hunters in Wisconsin. Oh, you guys are gonna make fun of me for not knowing this off the top of my head. What is that? $20?
Oh, that'd be like
$10 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so the increase in deer licenses would bring another $10 million to the state, just for deer licenses. Okay. Guess what we paid $175,000 for last year?
What?
Wolf depredation claims.
What?
Yes. So if a farmer lost his cattle, his sheep, somebody lost a dog.
We paid $175,000 into that.
From animals that were killed by wolves in Wisconsin. And this is where I want you to put that map up.
Okay.
That was the map.
Yep.
With, just let me know when you have it up there.
Yep, it's up.
So the blue circles were household pets killed by wolves. The red circle were hunting dogs killed by wolves. The brown circle was livestock killed by wolves. Blue checkmark, pets that were threatened by wolves. Brown checkmark, livestock that was threatened by wolves. And yellow checkmark, people threatened by wolves. And what I say, enough is enough. It's time to hold the feds accountable for the deal that we had in place when wolves were reintroduced well over 30 years ago, which was a population here of 250 wolves. Now we have over 2,000. Michigan's dealing with this. Minnesota's dealing with this. Montana's dealing with this. Wyoming is dealing with this. All these other states are dealing with this. And what really bothers me personally is, number one, I'm old enough to remember that initial deal. They said, we want to introduce wolves because they're endangered. Well, guess what? There's 60,000 wolves in North America. We have plenty of wolves. Canada, you want wolves, go to Canada. You can kill them basically on site. I mean, I think you still have to buy a license, but there's plenty of wolves, and that was not our deal. So, hey, by the way, guys, I'm increasing all your license fees because we're running in a shortfall. And I'm going to take $175,000 of that money and give it to the farmers who lost their livestock, which they should be compensated. But it's like, guess what? The wolf deserves more. We should have wolves. The wolves are a majestic creature that need to be managed. And that's it. That is another thing that it is such, all this stuff goes together. And the more I think about it, the more, it pisses me off, because we had a deal. We were supposed to have management. And then we get all this political partisan distractions to say, oh no, we're not gonna manage those.
Right.
They're in our backyard. They're not in your backyard. If they're in your backyard, you'd want to manage too. Yeah. Okay, so that's it for the news section, Ian. That kind of went a little bit longer than I expected it to
go. There was a lot going on. We had to brief everyone. We had to catch them up on what's going on in the deer hunting world.
And that was a lot. Okay, so notes is much shorter. It's an abbreviated version, and the notes section hopefully is a little bit more pleasant from my blood pressure standpoint. Okay, let's start with Missouri notes. This is cool. Now, have you ever heard of this? I don't know if you've read my notes on this one. Missouri has what they call, you guys really outdid yourself on this. It's called the Snack Stick Program for School Children. And it's part of Missouri's Share the Harvest program, which they have in 32 counties, which I did not know. The Snack Stick Program for children is people who donate venison, send them to certain processors, and those processors make them into meat sticks, the things we all love, like Slim Jims or whatever they're called. And the National Rifle Association just donated $30,000 for the second straight year to help fund that program. I thought that was pretty cool. That's out of Missouri. I've got a couple more. Georgia.
I just want to point out, by the way,
these are all
that's
venison related.
3.5. That's like 4% of the entire state. Like 32 counties. I just looked.
Is it?
Up. That's a good chunk.
That's a good chunk. I think that's something they should have in every state.
Oh yeah.
We have venison donation in every sate, but imagine, you get it donated in most states. It's like they grind it in a burger and they give it to food pantries, which is awesome. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. But think about you turning kids on to venison. Awesome. Great idea. Georgia, Hunters for the Hungry has tripled. This is brand new news here. Tripled the number of participating venison processors in their state, up to 35 processors now. And their goal is to get to 50.
That's awesome.
To help stamp out hunger. They call it food insecurity. Come on. That's just another PC term.
For hunger, literally.
It's for hunger. It's Hunters for the Hungry. I love that organization. That's getting right to the point. There's a couple more here. Michigan donated 140,000 servings last year of venison to the food banks in the state of Michigan. So 140,000 servings. I'm guessing it's probably like a quarter pound each. You'd have to run those numbers. It's probably, here we go. Probably just like Kentucky. Kentucky served out, well, no, they did more. They did 500,000 servings. I thought it was, 500,000 servings in Kentucky to food banks. So that's a lot. I mean, we're talking in Kentucky alone, I don't know. It's like,
that's a good chunk of
over 100,000 pounds of venison.
Yeah.
And Ohio is now up to 34 processors that are taking venison. So, I mean, that's really good. You're looking at Georgia, Michigan, Kentucky, Ohio, some big deer hunting states. And not only are they managing their herds for the most part, they're giving it away a lot. So that's a big tip of the hat to those hunters. And now this one, the last one in the notes, I thought was really interesting. So somebody can tell me where St. Lawrence County, New York is. I think it's in the western part of the state, which may or may not be the Finger Lakes. So somebody put a comment wherever you're listening to this podcast and let me know. But St. Lawrence County, New York, road kills are now allowed to be donated to venison programs. So
kudos to that county for doing that.
Yeah.
They're up there. They're tucked up there in the very far northwest corner.
Northwest corner.
Yeah.
And you know how difficult it is with a roadkill, but hey, that's taking something that was going to rot in the ditch, and you might only get a few pounds of meat out of it, but I think that's a very noble and admirable thing that they're doing in St. Lawrence County, New York. Okay, that's our notes, Ian. We buzzed through that, and now we're going to do the review, which I'm just going to talk about. So this was Ian's idea. He said, hey, why don't you just tell about products that you've used? And obviously a lot of them come from our sponsors, that whether it's a TV show or the magazine or things like that, we get to try this stuff. One is from Wildlife Research Center. I love their scent control products. I've used them for years, but it's not a scent control product that I'm going to tell you about. Have you seen these, the golden ropes that they've come out with? So basically it is a kit that you get. It's got we've got a bucket over there, but it's actually got deer pee in it. So I'm not going to show it you. But it comes with a bucket. It comes with a couple of these ropes. The ropes are scent free. They actually source these ropes. I talked to the guys. They source these ropes specially for this because they did not want anything with an oil impregnation on it, which a lot of ropes have. Synthetic ropes have it. They wanted a rope that was clean, that could absorb scent. And I've used these ropes for a couple of years now. And the biggest attraction to these ropes is that a lot of guys use them in place of their mock scrapes. So they take the rope, they put it in a mock scraper location or in a established scrape location, and you use like a zip tie, you tie it to the branch, and you get some of that scent on there. You can use the scent that comes with it, or you could use like a special golden estrus or something like that. And it helps with buck sightings, especially over the cameras during the rut. Well, this past season, we have a bunch of these up on our lease here, not far from the office. And one thing that I found, and I know you saw it too, Ian, is we had some cutty-back cameras on these ropes. And what I have found is that the deer not only use them during the pre-rut and the rut, you'd see bucks coming in and checking them and actually making scrapes underneath them. Steve Bartilla has had fabulous success with this. But now over the winter, I've found that we have actually created travel corridors where there were no travel corridors before. And what I mean by that is we have deer activity in front of these cameras by these ropes at all times during the day. And it was it's even now. It's into February.
Yep.
January, February, we're almost to March. And I'm seeing it's like, you know what? We didn't have any pictures. That spot we had, there's the road, and then it kind of cuts down into the swamp.
Yeah.
And we put a golden rope there. Before we did that, there was basically, we threw a camera there because it was right where we were driving in. And we got an occasional coyote, I think, some turkeys, and an occasional deer. Now what I have found is by them visiting those scrapes, and actually there were natural scrapes after that throughout fall, is that the deer have been using these spots as transition areas throughout the day. So that is a tip that I'm going to give to you guys. If you haven't tried it, get a golden rope, put it out there. You can't just throw it anywhere. It does have to be, obviously, somewhere where deer are traveling. That's the best action you're going to see when you're hunting. But then as they become more acclimated to that spot, I think what happens is instead of, cutting through 20 yards over there or 50 yards over there, they cut through there automatically. So that is my testament review.
Yeah, and I just want to build off that, Dan, and that with this, we've noticed just in the photos that we've gotten, they're coming in from all angles here. So we really, like you said, creating a transition area here. This is taking a piece of ground that we got that wasn't so sure about what it was yet. It had no identity, and it's giving it an identity, a lot more than just a traditional mock scrape would. This has a lot more appeal to it for the whitetail.
And I think it's because they actually hold the scent longer.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened. Mock scrapes can do that, especially in areas.
They do a great job of getting that scent out there for sure. Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of there, and it's been like all the way up into December. Now, especially guys who hunt a lot, they will tell you, you get into those traditional hub areas where you got scrapes that are the size of a pickup truck bed. Where they rip those areas up, and you will see that there in areas where you have mock scrapes. This, I think, like I said, it's basically telling you, well, the stairway's over here now. We moved it 20 yards or 50 yards down the way. I believe in it, and I'm actually looking forward to trying some of these in those areas. We have tighter spots where if you can imagine, there's a creek bottom, and it's really high marsh grass. And some of those crossings are within, I'd say you'd have 3-4 crossings within an area that's maybe all told 75 yards long. But when you're bow hunting especially, you want to be right where that intersection is. And I think that we can, alter deer behavior a little bit to do that. So I'm looking forward to trying that this year.
100%. You're hitting them from all angles with this. You have, when it comes to this property that we're on now, it's just a matter of like, we're controlling our food, we're controlling their shelter, we're controlling right now with the scrapes, their transitions even, and we're planning our hunts and our stands around just that info that we're getting.
Yeah, it's not a silver bullet by any means, but it certainly helps. Yeah. And I give it 5 stars. It's a good product. So that is the product review for this week. I think I've talked myself till I'm blue in the face, which is fine.
I want to go back to saving. I mean, I know we don't have time, but we got to do another podcast in the future about just all the money spent on ridiculous things and conservation efforts.
I just want to see the breakdowns.
Yeah.
And even though I can be skeptical, I'm more than open-minded enough to, if somebody puts the stuff in front of me. Now, of course, not every single person is going to be, I'm not the king of it, but I think as a taxpayer and a stakeholder in wildlife, we all need to do that, whether it's wildlife or whether it's whatever funds. It's just like going to your school board meeting. It's like, well, we want to buy a new pool for the whole school. It's like, well, okay, well, let's have a referendum on this. And that's got to be the same mentality with our spending on this stuff, because we can't just go out with open checkbooks on anything. And we have to be asking questions on all of it. But I agree with you, Ian. We have to have a bit more accountability, because I think there's just been too much complacency across the board with way too much of this stuff.
Yeah.
All right, that's it, guys and gals. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Dan Schmidt. If you want to, this was episode number 148, by the way. We're getting to number 150 here real soon. We come at you every Thursday. All we ask you to do is like and subscribe to wherever you're listening to the Deer Talk Now podcast. For Ian Sanchez, I am Dan Schmidt. We will catch you again next Thursday for another brand new episode.